All right, guys, Captain Paul here, and today I got some huge news, big news on the state of this brutal boat market. Nothing's horribly changed, and I want to hear you guys' comments on what I'm about ready to tell you because it's pretty unbelievable. I don't really think, I just talked to some people that are really good, close with the channel. They just sold their trawler, and it was a $50,000 trawler, and that's what it sold for, $60,000. But they put a lot of money into it. They put over $20,000 into it, and so they created some value. And when this market, what we'll call this market, I don't really think that market is completely affected as badly, because a $50,000 trawler is a $50,000 trawler. And it really doesn't matter, what are you going to pay, 45 or 55, depending on what kind of value they created? And some of those need to go to the chipper as well. But the good ones, like this one had a good bottom job, brand new canvas, brand new electronics, brand new solar system, brand new dinghy, just everything, and a lot of money was spent. And so it created a lot of value. So that boat will maintain its value no matter what. In pretty much any market, somebody would be willing to pay that kind of money for that boat. Where I think where I see this big trend is, and this one is a little concerning to me, because when I see this kind of haircut for this quality of boat, it makes a statement. And before I get started on this, it was at Grand Banks. And I actually went to this Grand Banks. Anybody that follows the channel really closely, you probably even know which boat it is. It's a sedan, and I went to Trawler Fest to see it at the beginning of the year. And there, the broker had it listed for, I think it was like they had it at the show special for $199. Even that price, I was like, yeah, that's it, because the boat was so frapping clean. Like, it was just like, you couldn't tell whether you're walking on a brand new boat, or I think this one's like a 1990. One thing I will tell you about the Grand Banks boats that I love, and I want to hear you guys, somebody in the comments to help me with this. As a broker and going through several surveys on these boats, on the Grand Banks specifically, they make probably one of the best hulls in the industry. And I'm not saying for planing or not planing or, boating. I'm saying for like no moisture. And that doesn't count on top of their wood decks where they screw the wood decks down. That's a whole different situation. But I'm just talking the hull in general. Like the gel coat is very, very thick on a Grand Banks. You can take, again, help me in the comments, because in 1971, I think, 70, 71, 72, somewhere around that year, they switched from wood boats to fiberglass boats. And you can take one of those boats from, let's just call it 73. Because I know they were fiberglass in 73, and I think it was halfway through 72 is where they switched from wood to fiberglass. Again, somebody in the comments make that comment. But that boat can be buffed out, and it'll look brand new from the original gel coat. I think they put on a freaking 1/4 inch of gel coat. It's one of the few hulls that will do that. My biggest problem with the Grand Banks, it's not the Standard, it's not the Europa, it's not the 36. It's not the My Yacht boat. It is the 42 Classic. And where I see the biggest problem with that is obviously the wood decks where the holes screw down. That causes leaking on top of the fuel tanks, and then the fuel tanks rust out. And also they put a refrigerant line underneath, and it goes right up and over and under, and it leaks right on top, or the condensation comes down and leaks on top of the tanks. So you see the fuel tanks. So bad fuel tanks and the teak decks. The 42 Classic is just, it's riddled with that problem. And there are owners that deal with that and maintain that correctly. And those boats are really, really nice. There's a couple of those that I love the Classic. I really, really do. I just never had any luck with a survey on one because of those issues. The ones I've looked at are not in that great of shape. But trust me, I've been on a few that were just absolutely gorgeous and well taken care of. And that issue, that they know about that issue, and it's dealt with correctly, if that makes sense. So this was a Grand Banks. It was at that boat show, and I believe they had it listed like 205, something like that. And then they had like a boat show special on it, 199. Well, that boat sold. It's actually sold about 4 or 5 times, and every time that it sells, for some reason the deal falls apart. And it perplexes me because it really is a clean boat. But I mentioned to the broker, this is probably about 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I said, how'd you guys listed that boat at the correct price, which was much lower than that 199? My suggestion was like 169. This boat would already be sold. But I think we saw a little bit of, where just a smidge, I want to hear in the comments, if it's a $160,000 boat and they sold it for, and they had it listed at 199. I mean, yeah, it created a lot of value, had new electronics, autopilot, beautiful. Like I said, just absolutely gorgeous boat. But what's the true value? What was somebody willing to pay? Because I thought if they listed it that stuck to the 169, I think the boat would already be sold and there wouldn't be any situation. But I have a particular person that watches the channel. I've been working with this person for a couple of years, and we've been talking boats, and I always said that this was a good boat for you and you should be looking at it. Well, he called and they talked to the listing broker, and he had made an offer, but it was pending on the boats in Virginia right now because it went to another trawler fest, and he wants it back in Florida, and then he'll take ownership of the boat. Well, that all had to be negotiated into the price, and they took a haircut on the boat because it ended up somewhere right around that 140 range for the boat. But that's what the person that I know was willing to pay, and then the owner decided to accept that offer. And so, that's a $60,000 haircut, but the true buck value on the boat is 160. And then that other little extra money that he has there he needs to buy a dinghy because it's one of the big things that the boat doesn't have. That's $25,000. And then the engine room needed a little bit of love. And what I mean by that, it needs engine serviced, and it needs the engine room needs to be a little bit better detailed, if that makes sense. So the money to get it up to that 160, he'll spend that. The new owner will spend that money, but he got a really fair deal on the boat. And it's all because of I think in the beginning it was just put on the market a little bit too high. And so that's, I think, the market that's really affected right now is, let's say, that $200,000. When you start asking $200,000 for a boat, that starts getting to be a lot of money. And the only ones that really bring that kind of money are the Holy Grails, which are the main ships. And when you see one, I just saw one the other day, and I'm really curious about this one. Bill brought it to my attention. He says, "Hey, Paul, did you see this one? The one I just brought down from Lake Erie was a full asking price of $239, blue hulled. It was in really good shape. I mean, the boat ran perfect for us the entire time. I think the hull is not in perfect shape, but the rest of the boat is in pretty decent shape, really nice shape, and new electronics, new autopilot. Love what they did with the refrigerator. Love what they did with the washer and dryer." And then I saw this one listed, and they listed it at $279. So I'm very curious. I want to hear in the comments, anybody know which one I'm talking about? It's over back where I picked up the other one. It's over on Lake Erie. So that boat, want to keep an eye on it. And I told Bill to keep an eye on it, and let's see what happens with it and if it actually sells, because I'll never know the true price of what it sells for, but if a broker does, then I will, because I can go back and look at the buck, but that'll take probably around 4 to 5 to 6 months to see the actual price that was paid, because it is listed through a broker. So we should, if the broker does everything that he's supposed to do, we should see the price of that one. So I'm very, very curious to that. And then also like the Bayliners, I was talking to Rolanda and Eve. Super cool. If I don't know if you got anybody that follows the channels, I want to hear this. Remember the Canadian couple that got on the boat with us from Canada, got on Southern Estate, and we left Gulf Shores, Alabama, and then they went all the way across. I think they got off in Clearwater. Yeah, that's where they got off. Anyway, they're here at the marina, super cool, and they're 4388 or 87 Bayliner, and I went and looked at it yesterday. A very cool boat. But anyway, Rolanda I would call her pretty much, she's a really research freak. And she said the 4788, she goes, Paul, you can't find this boat. Let's start with that. And then with Cummings, that even makes it more rare. Freshwater, brand new dinghy, a bow thruster that will knock you off the front of it, because these boats don't come standard with that bow thruster. So you got to be, that creates some value right there. So that boat I would call more of like a holy grail. It will sell for in excess of over 200,000. I think if with a broker listed that boat, he would have it listed somewhere right around that 250, 260 range. But you got to remember the brokerage commission, we all talked about this, is 10%. So that would be on a $250,000 boat, it would be $25,000. So if I sold it on the YouTube channel for $225,000, that would create some real value for somebody. So I think that it will sell, but we'll see what happens with it. And if it does go to the broker, no big deal at all to me at all. I love Pam and Mike, and I want to do whatever I can to help them out and get them the most amount of money that I can, because they have put in quite a bit of money. It's not how much money they have in the boat, and it's how much money are they going to lose, because that's boating is a bad investment. We all know that. But I do think they'll be able to recoup a majority of their money, and their losses will be minimal. And when you're dealing in that bracket, just use the 5%, something like that, and hopefully we can keep the sustained losses to something like that. I don't know, but we'll see. So I think the market is it's strong in some points, very weak in some points, and then but I do think that $50,000 trawler market, always the same. That stayed the same through this entire time. I think a $50,000 trawler is a $50,000 trawler, and then when you get up to past that 120, everybody starts getting a little more freaky. And I'm not a big fan of the Volvo engines, and I'm not a big fan of the 31 series cats. And just Google it, look it up. Those are the Volvos are very expensive, and they're hard to get parts for. And the problem with them is the mechanics. You can't, they got to plug it into their computers. And if you don't have that Volvo guy, it is what it is. I know when I was in the Keys, we did not have a Volvo guy out there. So it was very difficult. They had to come in from Miami or Fort Lauderdale to come work on the Volvo engines. So it's just like an engine I like to stay away from, but doesn't mean it's a bad engine. It's a good engine. It's just, it's expensive, and know that going in. And then the 3100 series on this, so 3116s, 3126s, 3196s. I'm just not a big fan of that cat motor. You can look it up. It was it made for a bad marine engine. I actually like it because it cleared out the space from the 3208s. 3208s, not a bad engine, I don't think. But again, not the big full 425 horsepower engines. You need to back those down under that, like a 375, 350 range, and that makes for a decent engine. But anyway, so the market, I would say, is not in a recovery mode. It is still 100% a buyer's market. And I think the sellers, there's a lot of emotional sellers right now who want to sell their boats. But there's also a lot of these sellers that are not going to sell their boats in this market. And then I think we're going to see that that transition of maybe some people starting to that they got a little overextended during the COVID thing. And we're seeing a lot of the old guys. I've seen a lot of these guys are just timed out, and the old guys are dying, actually. And then the boat's going to an estate. But then, it's good and bad, because sometimes the estate thinks the boat's worth, a lot of money, what the owner put into it. But it's not. It's only worth what somebody will pay for it. And again, you can just look it up, the value of the boat, and it is what it is, So a $250,000, $300,000 boat, and it has a buck value of that, and then it's in really good working conditions, it can bring that. But if it's, if the boat is $250,000 buck value, and they think because that owner put in $300,000, and then he thinks the value is 300, and then the family thinks the boat is worth 300, it just sits. It doesn't sell. It doesn't make any sense. A boat is a depreciating asset, and just know that going in. Anyway, peace out. I hope you guys, I want to hear the comments down below. There's going to be a lot of arguments over this, and I want to hear what you guys think about all this, because the market is, this is my opinion of it, because right now, you guys know that I'm looking at boats, and thank you guys so much. A lot of people have been sending me emails and comments about the boat that I want to cross the Atlantic in. And I do have 3 boats lined up to see, and I'm hoping to start those videos here, actually this week, next week, sorry. So I'm hoping to go see one before next weekend. I think I have time on Thursday to go see one, and then we'll do a little video talking about that. But I'm looking right now for that boat, so we'll see what happens with that. And I think it's a fun time it's a fun time because you just don't know. You got to go look at these things. You got to make assess what you think and what you give the boat value, and what are you going to use the boat for. Anyway, peace out. Remember, live life with no regret. I do. And thank you so much for watching. It's unbelievable. Thank you guys. I appreciate it so much.